Honourable Minister.
Much, Deputy Speaker. Let me say to Professor Bozzoli that I'm not sure that at this time I'm asking the administrator for improvements. There are three priority areas in response to your question that I have asked the administrator to focus on. The first is to pay very, very concentrated attention to finalizing the closeout of the 2017 and 2018 funding cycles. A number of processes are involved with that particular area. For example, ensuring that students receive confirmation that they will be funded if this hasn't been done already, that their details and particularly registration confirmation is done, that they sign the bursary agreement forms and that their allowances are paid out. So that's the first priority. The second is that steps must be taken in line with preparations that have already been underway to launch the 2019 application cycle in early September. And I will be making an announcement later this week in that regard. And then the third is to support us in developing an effective plan in consultation with colleges and universities to manage the funding of students in 2019 in order that students that apply from when we open applications this year and those who are already beneficiaries know their funding status and response from NSFAS before registration begins in 2019. So those are the three priorities that I've asked him to focus on. As to improvements, I think we'll come to that later. This is tough enough, but that's where we want to start. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Bozzoli.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's very helpful. Look, NSFAS has announced that its deadline for students to finalize their funding is actually the end of this week, Friday. How many students remain unfunded at the moment? And how many do you think might remain unfunded after Friday because they may not have signed their agreements or for other bureaucratic reasons? And what do you envisage will happen to those students if they don't meet the Friday deadline? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
We're working around the clock to ensure that we reach as many of the students that are currently not funded. You'd recognize that part of the difficulty we have is as we process the applications, and particularly since we're dealing with 17, 8, and 18, we're finding that there are going to be a number of students who will receive quite a significant sum of money. So we're looking at how we would address that as well, because they have not been funded for quite a significant period. In terms of the statistics I have received from the administrator, we're looking at around 63,000 students, with the majority coming from the TVET college sector. So there's less of a problem in the universities, but certainly with respect to TVET college students, we have a significant problem. What is pleasing is in the first 7 days of the work of the administrator, we've received massive cooperation from institutions, and I'm really appreciative of that, as well as student organizations playing a role in ensuring that students do sign the statement of particulars, because that then helps us to finalize the application process and ensure that we have disbursements. So within the next 4 days, we're going to see significant disbursement of funding, because we are getting the SOPs back in quite a large stream, and I'm pleased about that. But there are a number that are not yet processed, particularly with respect to registration confirmation. There are other problems with respect to course code correction, as well as tuition fee matching with course code. So all of that is being ironed out, and what I'm happy about is for the first time on getting a report this week, I actually can have some comfort that the report I'm getting has accuracy associated with it. Thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you. Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Minister, just recently, 3 weeks ago, there was a meeting with the department, and the new incumbent to the position of chair of NSFAS mentioned, among other things, that what has caused some problems with regard to NSFAS were issues of centralization of the systems, lack of resources, human capital, material, and technical, students not signing the agreements or signing late after receiving the offers, or lack of information that is cascaded to schools so that students are aware of what is happening with regard to NSFAS before they enroll at universities and TVET colleges. Now, I would like to find out, Honorable Minister, how you are going to utilize the student formations to assist in this process. And then secondly, there is the issue of students who reside in flats that are threatened by landlords from time to time when they have not received their fund.
Your time has expired. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I have said before that I think a large part of the problem related to the ability of NSFAS to execute a significant administrative exercise, but also we had the problem of the introduction of the so-called student-centered model, which was piloted in a few institutions in 2016 and then introduced to the whole sector in 2017 without an adequate evaluation. So clearly, that model was a problem and we need to move away from it. I think institutions must play a role of support and should know who's applying, who needs assistance, and so on. But they were out of the loop because the process jumped institutions. So that has to alter significantly. Secondly, the student organizations have actually been playing a very important role, as have SRCs, in ensuring we communicate. But I believe in developing a new system, we have to make better use of technology. Most students have access to a mobile phone. We should have an app, which is a NSFAS app. They should be able to check information fairly speedily. We should be using local educational establishments, libraries, song centers. So I think online support and processes would be a very important addition to what we need to do. But that, of course, is looking into the future. For now, let us solve the problems of 2017-18, and let's successfully introduce 2019. As to the nature of system we will develop, it's from the experience of the administrator and what he alerts us to, along with an expert support team, as new modifications for ensuring we have an appropriate and best system in place. So that is being worked on, and when we're ready, we will make the appropriate announcements. I have said that communication has to be improved. We don't have proper pamphlets or leaflets that are explanatory and very easy to access, that are available for young people, either at school level or even when you've exited the school system. All that
Thank you.
must be improved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Ronyani.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, this is not us accusing you. You admitted yourself earlier this year that NSFAS system has collapsed when you said application for next year will not be open until NSFAS sort out payments backlogs from 2017 and 2018. These backlogs will never be sorted because to date, some students are yet to sign their schedules of particulars, and many have not received food allowances since February. Our students are not eating, and it is impossible to learn properly on an empty stomach. Our SRCs are now forced to raise funds so that they can provide students with 1 meal a day, like at the University of Limpopo. But this is not sustainable, and students must get their allocations. Can you commit here before the House when the backlog will be sorted and students get their allowances? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I challenge you to identify a media statement in which I used the word collapsed. And I would welcome to see that, because it would mean somebody forged my name. Secondly, with respect to the problems, I have just indicated that these are being solved and that disbursements will begin as from tomorrow. So students who've not been receiving funding, who signed this schedule of particulars and who have been confirmed as registered by institutions will begin to receive their money. Not just the funds of 2018, but those who have a backlog will receive those funds from 2017 year as well. As for SRCs raising money, I think that spirit of voluntarism has been an absolute point of admiration for me. It should never have happened, but I admire the young people of our country who have stood up in support of fellow students to assist them. I believe this is the nature of individual, that is the legacy that we've asked all of us to be in terms of Tata Nelson Mandela and Mrs. Sisulu. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Volmerans.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Minister. Noting that work has started on the development of a new student funding policy for students at the universities and TVET colleges, which will include the academic and academic service and ethical requirements of students linked to receiving the funding. How will this policy contribute to improving the administration of NSFAS funding to students? And will the policy have any impact on the review of the student-centered model? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Volmerans. Clearly, all that we're trying to do is to ensure that we indeed improve the system. And I think having the association of access to the full bursary with academic performance is an important criterion which had existed in the past model of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. And matters of ethics and integrity are absolutely imperative. We would like to ensure that funds are spent in a manner that is in accord with the purpose for which young people are in college or university, which is to study and complete their courses. The Honorable Nkwakwa yesterday pointed out concerns with respect to utilization of the Xbox vouchers, where students try to ask shopkeepers for cash to be given in exchange for food vouchers, and then some go and purchase alcohol. It's not all students who do that, but any use of the funds in that way is not how we intend it to be used. It's not part of policy, and therefore I think we would have to look at what form of sanction there might be in cases where there would be abuse of funds that the public are making available for the support of the young people of our country. Thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you very much, honourable members. That does with question 78. We now move to question 65, asked by Honourable C.C. September to the Minister of Higher Education.
Thank you very much again, Deputy Speaker. You didn't even give me time to catch my breath. Deputy Speaker, honourable members would be aware that I have appointed Dr.Randal Carolissen as the administrator of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in terms of the act that gave life to the scheme. His responsibilities are those that I've referred to in response to the question from Professor Bozzoli, the closeout that I've made a reference to earlier, as well as the development of a viable plan for the 2019 funding cycle. We will be putting in place a support team to assist Dr. Carolissen, and we've identified the following areas as critical to attend to. So the team will consist of skills in student financial aid management, human resources management, information technology, because of the integration challenges that we've had, and of course business systems analytics and other skills that the administrator may convey to me as he becomes familiar with the work that he should do. We are currently in discussion with him as well as officials in the department as to what skills we need and the most appropriate persons who can assist us. And I thank honorable members who have sent names in to me, because I think the list has been a very useful one to develop. We will work through that team with staff at NSFAS and ensure that within the period of 12 months of the administration, the staff are given the capacity and training to be able to undertake the work appropriately, so that we have long-term stability and that the entity is able to execute its mandate. I have asked the administrator to advise me as to whether there are any areas that he, in the course of his work, might identify as areas where there was malfeasance or some form of fraudulent utilization of the funding, so that then I can decide whether or not I should appoint a forensic team to carry out further investigation. And he's doing his work, is looking at whether there are such instances which may merit such a decision by myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I'm informed that Honorable Killian will take charge of the question on behalf of Honorable September. Honorable Killian.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you very much, Minister, for your very extensive reply. In fact, the question that I wanted to pose was surrounding improved business processes and an integrated system between universities and NSFAS as it is. But could you also just please indicate, in this process, will they consider possibly reintroducing officers at institutions? We are aware that students had great difficulty to follow up on their allocations in terms of NSFAS bursaries, and the local footprint of NSFAS was definitely missed at university and technical college campuses. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, let me be honest and confess that I am not in support of a large institution that then takes up a lot of the money that should go to students. I believe information communication technology is an important resource in ensuring that you can reach as many young people and institutions as possible. So my own preference, but again, this will depend on the experience accrued by the administrator, but my preference is that we would work with financial aid officers at institutions rather than creating national student financial aid officers, which then become a huge operational cost for the scheme. So I'm really more persuaded that it is at the systems level, it's more analytics and systems development that we should focus upon, and that it is the honorable members who would assist us to inform young people and ensure that they know they can apply and what is needed in order to apply successfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next follow-up question will come from Honorable Professor Bozzoli.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, you didn't answer part of my question, which is what would happen to some of the 63,000 students still unfunded if they didn't get funded by the end of this week? But my main question is, you've mentioned the student-centered model as being the main cause of all these problems in NSFAS. But you must agree, surely, that the failure of NSFAS to disburse its funding must be almost entirely a result of the surprise fee-free funding announcement by President Zuma 8 months ago, rendering the department unprepared to implement this announcement and all of the new criteria that it involved. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Well, Honorable Bozoli, I'm not sure how many times one would repeat this. We're working hard through the administrator to ensure that funding reaches students who should have funding. Not all of the outstanding number will receive their funding this week because there are queries, but what I'm happy about is that we actually now have numbers that we can have rather assurance that they give us a proper picture of the problem. You'll also be aware that we had been releasing upfront payments to institutions and that students had signed to indicate that they've received money. So there are steps that we had taken. Significant funds were released in April, a further tranche in June. So we have been making funding available. As to the challenges or problems being entirely related to the announcement of free higher education for poor and working class students, I'm afraid I cannot agree. I believe it is a factor, but it can't be entirely laid at the door of that announcement, particularly given that you have outstanding applications not processed from 2017 before the announcement was made. So no, I don't believe that it rests entirely with this announcement. I believe there are many other factors, and this is why the set of issues to be addressed are so many. It's not just one thing, because there are many, many human resource and other issues that are related to the inadequacies that we identified. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next question will be asked by Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, no doubt this question is related to the previous one. I want to refer again to the previous briefing that the Portfolio Committee recently held, and where management, the board of NSFAS, student informations, TVET college principals and other stakeholders attended and made presentations. Now, the issue of the usage of technology and the devolution of the system came quite sharply. And it was also mentioned that there are other centers that will be utilized, like municipalities and centers where the broadband for technology is available, they will be used. Can you inform this House, Honorable Minister, what is it that has been done to ensure that those centers will be utilized? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kubisa. Honorable Minister.
At this point, they've not been used, because as I've said, what we need to work on is developing a system and process that we will be assured will work in the way that we wish it to work, which is efficiently and in the interests of students. So at this point, we haven't got to where you would like us to be. But we've agreed with the administrator that better use of information systems will vastly improve what we're able to do. So already we've begun speaking to libraries, for example, many of which are connected throughout the country. And they are willing to allow young people and to support them as they apply. Schools have media centers, computer centers, because they teach computer applied technologies. So already we've begun the discussions, but I don't want to say definitively this is what is going to happen. I think we must investigate properly, because if you take half measures, that's when you land back to the kinds of problems we have had to deal with. But we're fully alert to the need to be broader, to the need to use technology more appropriately, and to the need to ensure that whatever we have is in association with post-secondary institutions and not separate from them. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The last follow-up question is from Honorable Matthias.
Madam Minister, if it was not you, it was your predecessor who publicly admitted that NSFAS was under stress and as a result was facing serious burden and to a point where it was collapsing under a heavy burden of bureaucratic and institutional corruption. Now, if that was the admission made by your predecessor, what measures do you take to ensure that you turn the system around? The model that you are so fond of, is it working? And if it's not working, why don't you replace it with a working model? If social development can distribute social grants so effectively until the Gupta minister was appointed, why don't you use that model to distribute NSFAS for deserving students?
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Matthias, o botsa potso e ntle. Mme wa e senya fa le fa. Se re lekang go se dira ke go baakanya. We would not have appointed an administrator if nothing was wrong. So that's the first point, that we have appointed someone who has assumed the full competence of a board. We've dissolved the board. So I think recognize gore tiro ya direga, gore ra araba mo go na le mathata teng. Because I think what you should do is acknowledge. And it's a, how mpitsa madam ke a tshoga tle. But thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next question, question number 50, has been asked by Honorable Mapanga to the Minister of Health.